Good day, everyone. My name is Len Meyer. I'm the president of Friends of Science. And I wish to extend a very warm welcome to all of you here today at this, our 9th annual luncheon. Our past luncheons have featured climatologists who discuss the science of climate change. This year, our guest speaker, investigative journalist Donna Laframboise, will focus on the behavior and trustworthiness of the IPCC. This issue is every bit as important as the science debate itself. So I would now like to call upon Peter Hawley, president of the Frontier Center for Public Policy, to introduce our guest speaker. Peter.
Sir. Thank you, Len. To start off, I would like to thank the Friends of Science for hosting yet another crucially important climate change event. We at the Frontier Center for Public Policy are proud of our long-standing relationship with the Friends. For those of you who don't already know, Friends of Science is a nonprofit organization run by volunteers dedicated to educating the public about what science really tells us about climate change. Even though world temperatures have not risen for the past 16 years, the global warming lobby continues to bombard us with breathless reports of imminent doom due to mankind's use of conventional hydrocarbon fuels. The IPCC's reports have proven extremely useful for governments seeking justification for greater central planning and more regulatory and taxation powers. Politicians and bureaucrats often cite the IPCC as a rationale for handing out subsidies and privileges to favored groups and corporations at huge taxpayer expense. But is the IPCC the unbiased, rigorously scientific body that they claim to be? Well, you are about to find out. Our speaker today has applied her well-honed investigative journalism skills to closely examine the so-called consensus in the climate science community about the causes of climate change. We certainly couldn't have a better person on the job than Donna Laframboise. Starting a few years back, she shone a bright light on the IPCC and found an organization riddled with corruption, run by eco-activists with a political agenda. Most people would be afraid to tell anybody about such a politically incorrect finding, but not Donna. She is no stranger to controversy. As a Canadian journalist, feminist, writer, and photographer, she seems to relish tough assignments. In 2011, her book, The Delinquent Teenager Who Was Mistaken for the World's Top Climate Expert, was published, and it has taken the world by storm. This expose of the IPCC has received critical acclaim, and as Georgia Institute of Technology climatologist Judith Curry explained, Laframboise's book makes a clear and compelling case regarding problems with the IPCC. In 2010, Donna organized a citizen audit of the latest IPCC assessment report to determine if the IPCC's claim that it only included peer-reviewed research was true. The audit found that 21 of the report's 44 chapters used less than 60% peer-reviewed sources. Besides her many articles in such publications as Canada's National Post, the Globe and Mail, and Toronto Star, Donna maintains noconsensus.org, a website that everybody here should visit. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the author who exposed the IPCC to the world, Donna Laframboise.
I'm delighted to be here in Calgary. My book, The Delinquent Teenager Who is Mistaken for the World's Top Climate Expert, is exactly 1 year old this month. And I have had the great pleasure of addressing audiences in Munich, in London, in 4 Australian cities, but this is in fact my first Canadian audience, so this is very exciting for me. Now, writing a book is a journey, and when I began, the book that I thought I was writing was quite different. I intended to present the pros and cons, the arguments for and against the idea of dangerous human-caused climate change. I wanted to let the public know that there was a diversity of opinion, because that's not always clear when you pick up a newspaper. But I ended up writing an expose of a UN organization, and that's not what I thought I was doing. Now, along the way, during that journey, something happened, and that's that I became a climate skeptic, or as I like to call myself these days, a climate rebel. Those of us who are climate rebels, who dissent from mainstream thinking about climate change, we have a big fat problem. Because on the one hand, there's us, scattered groups of individuals, voices in the wilderness. And on the other hand, there is a worldwide, government-funded, politically influential organization that is on the cusp of celebrating its 25th anniversary. It's known as the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Now, most people have never heard of the IPCC, which makes it really difficult to even have a conversation about this organization. But make no mistake, your government has heard about the IPCC. And if you write to your elected representatives expressing doubt about climate dogma, you will almost certainly receive a reply back that says that something along the lines of, your government accepts the findings of the IPCC. This is a letter dated last year from your Ministry of Environment and Water. And to provide another example, here's a slick 28-page document available on the Alberta government website. It's called Facts About Climate Change. And on the page that follows the table of contents, one of the first things we hear about is the great IPCC, along with its web address. Now on page 12, we're told that the IPCC believes that climate change will cause more intense storms. And those of you who've already read my book know that the peer-reviewed research currently finds no connection whatsoever between carbon dioxide emissions and more intense storms. You will know from my book that, as a matter of fact, the IPCC relied on a single, non-published, non-peer-reviewed paper to make that argument. But there's your government talking about it as if it's undisputed fact. And on page 18 of your government's discussion of climate change facts, rank speculation on the part of the IPCC about what's going to happen centuries hence is presented to the public as a sound conclusion. So even here in Alberta, where fossil fuels are such an important part of your economy, even here where political conservatives have governed for decades, the IPCC is the unquestioned authority. It's a similar story the world over. For years now, officials at all levels, from small municipalities to federal ministries, have insisted that we need to fight climate change because the IPCC says so. While many UN bodies do their thing there in the distance, and they don't have any direct influence on your life or your pocketbook, this UN body does, and it wants to intrude even further. Now, Thomas Stocker is a Swiss climate modeler, and he's currently in charge of the hard science section of the IPCC, which is known as Working Group 1. Last June, he was interviewed by a reporter at length for a story that then appeared in the Vancouver Sun, And this headline suggests what will happen to your family finances if the IPCC is ever in charge. Triple the price of gas to save the planet, says this IPCC official. Now, Rajendra Pachauri has been the chairman of the IPCC for the past decade. He thinks new taxes should be introduced to deter us little people from flying. Meanwhile, he himself flies practically non-stop. He thinks we should eat less meat and that we all need to undergo a radical value shift. Now let's think about that for a moment. This UN official wants to change my lifestyle and my values. What makes this gentleman imagine that my values are any of his business? So to recap, the IPCC is a UN body that's already influencing our governments and our lives, and it wants to expand its influence. It seems to me, therefore, that we should be paying a bit more attention to this organization. But here's a remarkable fact. Even though the IPCC has been around for nearly a quarter century, even though it was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007, even though it is relied on by governments far and wide, my book is the first independent examination of this organization. No other journalist has bothered. So what happens when we begin to look closely? What do we find? I'm here to tell you that the IPCC suffers from a number of problems that fatally undermine its credibility. On this occasion, I'm going to talk about two of them: who writes its reports and the overall structure of the organization. Since the mid-1990s, the media has been telling us that the people writing IPCC reports are the world's top scientists and best experts. Okay. So here's Jeffrey Lean, who's a writer for The Independent back in October 1995. He said, "This is the world's top experts." Fast forward 12 years, he's now become the environment editor. He's still telling us these are the world's top experts. This refrain, this mantra, has been going on for a long time. Green groups have been singing from exactly the same hymn book, okay? Nor is there any mystery as to where this idea comes from. It comes straight from the chairman. Here's what Rajendra Pachauri told a newspaper a few years back. These are people who have been chosen on the basis of their track record, on their record of publications, on the research that they have done. These are people who are at the top of their profession. But those claims turn out to be total nonsense. A number of talented and experienced scientists have indeed helped to write IPCC reports over the years. The problem is that many other IPCC authors